Welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. This is web editor Nicole Raleigh, and today I am joined by Cencora's Sandra Anderson, SVP of International Commercialisation, and Chris Williams, SVP and International Managing Director at Alloga Europe and ICS, which are part of Cencora. Welcome both.
Hi Nicole, nice to be here.
So with the FDA and EMA releasing their annual reports detailing novel drug approvals in 2024, today my guests and I will be discussing those recent trends related to drug approvals, as well as the challenges and the opportunities both small and large pharma companies will face in the year ahead. But before we sink our teeth into all that, perhaps you both could tell listeners, or I might even say remind listeners, a little bit more about yourselves, your respective journeys to today, and your work at Cencora.
I can go first, Nicole. Thanks for having me. I'm Sandra. So background, I have been at Cencora for around 20 years. My background in pharmaceuticals, I've been working at Cencora in various roles, different markets on strategy, innovation, and commercialization. I also previously worked within the pharmaceutical industry, servicing, visiting doctors and selling product in the specialty area. Through the experience I've gained internationally, working in Canada, US, and internationally now in Europe for the past few years, is really understanding the complexities and the challenges that our pharmaceutical manufacturers and emerging biopharma have when they're launching their products in different markets. My team specifically is serving our emerging biopharma. So those are the small to medium, mid-sized manufacturers, typically launching products in the specialty space, and looking at early stage at commercialization, and really looking across Cencora's global capabilities, our expertise, and how we can help bring them to market. We do work with them across different markets, Canada, US, and Europe, and really try to design and execute strategies tailored to their needs. And I have a team of about 20 that serve our customers from the early stage clinical through commercialization to help them accelerate their launch. So very happy to be here today and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Sandra.
Okay,
Chris?
I guess I'll go next. Yes, again, thank you for inviting me today. So I'm Chris Williams. I've worked in logistics for well over 30 years, but specifically 25 plus years in healthcare logistics industry. And I've always been driven by a passion to help support patient access and latterly for more critical medicines. So in my role leading Cencora's 3PL businesses, which as you previously mentioned, consist of Alloga in Europe and ICS in the United States. We provide pharmaceutical companies with support that they need to help ensure their products can reach patients around the world. And over the last 2 decades, the role of 3PL providers in healthcare has expanded and evolved, and it will always evolve. But it's evolved significantly over the last 2 decades, and will continue to evolve our business to meet our customer needs and to support the innovative products that are now being developed.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you both. So let's turn to the theme of today and begin with one of the takeaways from the FDA's annual novel drug report, which was the increase in smaller biotech companies taking their product to market on their own. Now, I was wondering if you could address what you think has perhaps contributed to that trend.
Maybe I'll start, Nicole. So we have seen a continuation of this trend over the last 5 years. Over the 5 years, really, companies launching their first product have accounted for a growing share of the products being submitted for regulatory approval, both in the US and in Europe. There was a study done by McKinsey where it showed that about 40% of the new assets that are being approved between 2018 and 2023 were launched by companies with little to no commercialization experience. So these are typically the smaller emerging biotech customer, manufacturer, and they might not have as much infrastructure and experience, but they're nearly double what those companies contributed over the previous 5-year span. And so we're seeing this trend increasing. A couple of trends that have influenced the shift. We have seen emerging biopharma companies that are accounting for a growing portion of the innovative products being developed today. Another study has shown that 70% of the clinical stage industry pipeline is going to be launched by these types of emerging biopharma companies. And while these emerging biopharma companies often have more limited resources, perhaps less commercialization experience, what we have seen is that when they're backed by the right partner, when they're funded, when they have that backing, they can go to market successfully on their own. So this is just some of the trends that we've seen over the last few years.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Chris?
I don't think there's much to add, really. I think Sandra covered it quite eloquently there.
I agree. For me, what really stood out there, Sandra, was this importance you mentioned near the end of partnership, and we might come back to that in our conversation as well. So, sticking with the focus on the biotech space, in your opinion, both what are some of the unique challenges that smaller biotech companies do face, and what is needed to ensure a successful go-to-market strategy? In other words, what are some of the perhaps key questions they need to address in the development and pre-launch stage?
So typically, a lot of these emerging biotechs, when they are bringing their product from the clinical phase into the commercialization stages, they do need to consider where they're going to launch their global market, where are they going to go first. And it is a very complex process, deciding, making decisions, and also gaining funding for each of those launches. For emerging biopharma companies specifically, another big thing to consider is they might not have the expertise or the capacity. They might have grand scale plans, but they don't even have a team yet, early stage. They're just shaping and building their global strategy to reach that global scale. So they often require more comprehensive support in that later stage clinical development phase through to commercialization. They're just hiring their first chief commercial officer. They might not even have a medical person or a market access, and so they're building that infrastructure early on. One of the things that when we do talk to these customers early on, sometimes it's just the one chief commercial officer we're talking to. The best advice that we've given and we continue to offer is to these companies is to engage us as partners, strategic partners, early in the process. If they come too late, there are milestones, significant accomplishments that they could have done in each market, and they can miss those timelines. So for companies launching their first product, it's important to understand the interdependencies throughout the planning process, including